Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome
Morning.
to the webinar on restaurant design and operations. My name is Lawrence Rapp. I'm a consultant to the cruise industry. I've been working in the cruise industry for many, many years and look forward to hearing how the industry is responding to this terrible situation we have at the moment with COVID-19. Joining me for the discussion this morning is Frank Weber, Senior Vice President of Hotel Operations for Virgin Voyages, and David Sagrista, who is Director of Business Operations for Mystic Cruises. So, gentlemen, let's talk a little bit about how your companies are responding to COVID-19 when it comes to restaurant operations. Clearly, a lot of things are going to have to change. Can you tell us a little bit about how you are redesigning restaurant spaces to comply with the restrictions brought up by COVID?
Okay.
David?
Yeah. Who wants to start here? David, you wanna start, or
sure.
Yeah, no problem.
Sure.
I can kick it off. Just very quickly for us. First and foremost, we are. We have already in our original design, avoided larger, kind of like main dining rooms and those kind of things. So we already broke it down into smaller restaurants that we have around. So none of our restaurants have more than 200 seats. And we also, by design, had already eliminated our buffet restaurant as such and made it a food market where there's really over-the-counter service. So it already in this case already helps us operationally, to do that. So now, as we're planning our return into service, there are a couple of things, of course, come up. Is first of all is managing the capacity and what is the right capacity on board, and then managing the capacity in the restaurant. And so what does it look like? So that you separate tables, that you make sure that they're far enough apart, that you can operate it. And then you may have we have some situations where we have restaurants where we have a lot of booth seating where you really cannot move the tables physically apart. And there, from a design perspective, we're building in separation screens. We make them part of the restaurant design, so they're not just some kind of plexiglass thing that you put somewhere, but you can actually put them into the design quite nicely, and it looks natural and it looks normal in the operational cycle. So that's, I think these are like the initial concepts that we're looking at. Hand it over to David.
Yes, so similar to what Frank said, we didn't look at redesigning spaces per se, because also at this time we are also learning about COVID-19, so it keeps being every day a different day when it comes to COVID. But we eliminated the buffet, and then we introduced breakfast, lunch, and dinner a la carte. And like Virgin, we have smaller shifts, so we have one main restaurant to play with, in addition to the Lido. And we created also separation screens that go with the design of the restaurant. We reach out to a company that help us with outdoor and indoor design, and they had plexi sort of like screen separators that go well with the restaurant design. In addition, we noticed that we needed a little bit more of a space for the dining areas to offer a different space as well. So we finalized, we removed the casino that we had on board, and we created also a different restaurant experience, a sushi bar experience, just to help us a little bit to have more flexibility at moving people into different dining areas. Of course, capacity is one of the things we are working on. The ships, as we are planning to go back to service, the ships go with 60% capacity. So that, to us, on a 200 passenger vessel, it means much lower guest count, and we feel we can manage the social distance already in one space, because we don't have very large crowds either. Some other changes we made at the entrance of our restaurant, we do have like a hand wash station as well. We changed everything to touchless, so we have the sensors rather that we try to do as many touchless points also for when they wash their hands, so they don't have to touch the sink or the faucets or anything like that. When it comes to redesigning the space, we did look, because in the expedition segment you do breakfast and lunch buffet style. It's very popular because they want to go fast, to go into the zodiacs and go and see the penguins, or to go to the landings, etc. So we did look at expanding the buffet towards expanding to the side, so there is more space in between the islands and so on, but we didn't get into that yet because it's a little bit we don't know exactly how it's going to help. So we just decided to remove the buffet service, and that seems to be the best process that we can implement right now.
David, when you say you're removing the buffet service, are you utilizing the counters for waiter service, or you're just not using the rooms?
We're not using the rooms. It could be that the waiters could use the buffet to, for storage or something that they need to put in the buffet to help them with the restaurant service, but it will not be an area for the guests to go by or to mingle or to pick up anything. It's just completely a la carte service. And in addition to that, we did not have room service in our product, and we developed also a sort of like a non-contact room service delivery, where we have a simple room service menu that can be delivered in a lunch box, so to say. And if the guest wants to have non-contact, we can just leave it at the door, and we also develop something like that.
Yeah, that makes I think that makes sense. I think there's a couple of things. So yeah, from the room service, obviously for us also, we had already developed our Ship Eats program, which is really based on a food delivery system, like you would experience that on land, like an Uber Eats, for example, where actually food is delivered in containers, in a bag, and we can just leave it at the door. And then after our sailors are done, and we call our passengers sailors, after done, they can put everything back in the bag, zip it up, and so it's sealed, and then we just have to pick it up. So I think these kind of innovations, will continue to develop in this, and I think one of the things that we are of course looking at is this is a bit of a moving target, and things will change as the prevalence of the virus is going to decrease over time, as vaccination and testing becomes available and more available, and treatments and so on. And so what we're looking at constantly is really looking at what happens land-based, and research that and understand what's happening there. Maybe in restaurants, maybe in bars, other larger locations, even schools, for example. And then we learn from that and make the necessary operational adjustments. The other piece that is I think important from a design perspective is the use of technology, and so how can you use technology to your advantage to, for example, do better staggered seating, so that not everybody shows up at the same time to the restaurant, so that you have that your guests can make reservations like you would again do in a land-based environment, and so you don't have these large groups coming there. You limit obviously the size of your tables. You're not going to have necessarily big tables of 12 anymore. You're gonna limit it to maybe like tables of 4, tables of 6 in that kind of environment. And then the other technology I think that everybody's looking at is air quality. Okay, and so how do we improve the air quality? How do we make sure we get sufficient fresh air into these areas? We have employed a technology called Atmos-Air. It's a bipolar ionization process where the air goes, in the air conditioning system, and so basically this air is polarized and becomes antimicrobial, and obviously the supply of fresh air into the ship, becomes a much more prominent issue, and how do we do that? So I think there's multiple things, from an operation and from a design perspective, that has to be looked at all the way around.
Yes, I agree to the technology point. That's also, we did develop QR codes for breakfast, so that the guests can access their menu during the day through these codes that are posted on the TVs in the cabins, also on the digital signage around the vessel. There is a QR code that they can point their phone to, and then they can read the menu. We also have developed the menus so they can be seen in the rooms, in the digital signage around the vessel as well. Also, temperature scanning, very important as well. We went to our property management system, the company that we use, and we put a tower for temperature scanning that recognizes facial recognition for the guest. So that there is a couple of those around the vessel. So the temperature is taken on a daily basis as well. So, and it goes into the guest profile. So if there is any temperature that is off records or whatever, we can act into that. Also, the point that Frank said about the fresh air, this is very, very important as well. We have access to fresh air all around the vessel. There are some areas, like maybe staircases, that some of the there is recycled, so we install also UV lighting in all the HVAC stations. So when the air gets recycled, there is another level of protection, although never perfect, because no one signs off that this will kill absolutely everything. It does gives you another level of protection there. So
yeah,
those some other changes we made over the last couple of months as well.
Very good. What about other tabletop items? Use and distribution of cutlery, for example. Are your procedures changing there?
Yes. Oh yeah,
Yes.
definitely. I think again, obviously, you're not going to see restaurants right now, where all the tables are fully set with with tabletop items. So you basically you set it, for each table individually. You just don't want to have it necessarily exposed, and so I mean, for any of these are things, again, where we look at, okay, what is the best practice out there, and we will employ that. And this, of course, mask wearing, and additional sanitation measures, sanitizing the tables, of course, which in the cruise industry we have, in a way we have done for a long time. And so some of these things procedurally that we're doing don't really change dramatically in this kind of way, because usually in the cruise industry we're it's very, very good when it comes to sanitizing and cleanliness and those kind of things. So that is really because we have been dealing in the industry for many years, really tackling outbreaks and viruses, in particular norovirus, which is obviously very, very can spread very, very quickly. So we do have a lot of experience in that space, quite honestly. Much more than maybe some land-based operations, and so we can really build on that.
Yes. Another important point that we discuss here internally, because a lot of COVID-19, a very important subject is contact tracing. So we also try to develop the service in the dining room where the same waiter and assistant waiter are always at the same station with the same guests. So in case there is any case on board, we can go back and then do the contact tracing procedures, facilitate those, so to say, by making these small changes. It's not a huge change operationally, but it's something that we think it's important as well in case anything happens, that we can follow the protocols of contact tracing as well.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think that's a critical piece. And you know, in our world, you know, because we have these different restaurants and people go to different restaurants, so we really cannot have the same waiter, you know, with the same guest. So it's a little bit different. So in our world, we have to employ technology, and so the technology that we employ is that we do have thermal cameras around the ship. Our sailors are constantly scanned. You know, to a point where we're saying, you know, we need to have a 2 times daily scan of each and every person on board. And then if we have somebody that you know, has a higher temperature, then obviously, you know, we will check on them, make sure they're okay. You know, possibly, you know, run a COVID test. You know, we have a medical center on board. We will have COVID testing capabilities on board, and basically, you know, work into that. And then, you know, because you know, our sailors wear wristband, they wear digital wristband. So with this, you know, with this, we are able to track where they are, and also track who they would have been in close contact with. And so this contact tracing, I think it's a very, very important piece.
Good. Frank, you mentioned masks. I'm assuming all public service personnel will be in masks when they're on duty?
Yes. Again, this is the I think this is the state that we're in today. Okay, so today, you know, it is very, very clear that masks, you know, help to prevent the spread of the virus. And so yes, you know, all the crew has to wear a mask. That's, you know, that's just going to be the standard for now. This may change in the future, you know. So again, you know, when things improve, then, you know, it may change. It comes with its challenges also. You know, we are going through multiple mask designs, you know, to understand what is really the best mask to wear, that you have to wear all day long. And so how do you see it? You don't want to, you know, we obviously want to have some kind of reusable mask that we can wash and so we don't create a lot of waste. But yeah, it's, you know, I mean, you suddenly, you know, learn a lot about different design of masks, what is most comfortable to wear. We have looked at you know, masks that, you know, for example, have like a clear so you can actually, you know, see people speak and see people smile. So far we didn't have a lot of success with that because they tend to fog up, or they tend to be not as efficient as some of the other masks. So that's an ongoing issue, but we are going at this, that you know, every crew member on board has to wear a mask, and again, you know, there would be the same for our sailors. You know, so if you're in these public areas, you know, you want people to wear a mask, and then of course when they sit down at the table, they can take their mask off. Again, really keeping an eye on what is the best practice, you know, on land right now, and how do we transfer that over to the ship.
Very good. And I guess the same applies for your ships, David?
Yes, everyone has to wear a mask. In the restaurant also, we implement the face shield in addition to the mask, and same in the reception. And also we, in some of the areas like the reception, again, we implemented a screen to separate, to have a little bit of separation in addition to the 1.5–2 meter distance. Same in the Shorex desk, cruise director desk, and also in the service we have the mask always mandatory, and the face shield as well in addition, for now. Of course, it's not an ideal situation, but for now that's what we are doing. Yes.
Yeah, I think you know, that's, and David, that's a very good point. Obviously, you know, we're looking at this first of all, really what are we doing across the entire ship, you know? So it's not, for us, it's not only, you know, doing something in the restaurants, but really protecting the entire ship. And so yeah, you have multiple touch points, you know, maybe your front desk, and again, you know, you put your measures in place there, but also there, you know, we say, okay, well, what can we do to avoid people coming to the front desk in the first place? And so we created what we call Voyage Well. That's our platform, our program, you know, for all these different areas. And so we have some guiding principles, you know, in those, and say, okay, you know, we you know, first we want to avoid, you know, bringing you know, any COVID on board, and that obviously then comes into a testing protocol and these kind of things, and that's developing quite nicely. There's new tests coming on board. You know, Abbott just announced that they got approval for their new antigen test, so that's, you know, that's quite promising. It's, you know, it's 15-minute test. It's like basically like a pregnancy test, and it's at $5 a pop. So that's something that can be easily executed, and so obviously we're looking at all these different options. And then you know, but obviously you cannot create a perfect bubble on the ship. So it's very difficult to do that, because, you know, you have crew coming on and off, you have you know, other people coming on and off, you have new passengers coming, you know, every turnaround, and so you don't have a perfect bubble. So the second thing is there, okay, you know, once you have a case on board, you know, how do you manage that, and how do you prevent it from spreading around? And I think that's where these measures come in, you know, very importantly. And this may be, you know, casino, this may be entertainment, this may be restaurants, this may be cabins, you know, all shore excursions, you know, all these kind of things, you know, that we need to think of. And then you bring it down to, you know, to your individual areas, specifically, you know, in this case, the restaurants, and besides all the other stuff you do up here, what is specifically that you need to do, you know, let's say specifically for a restaurant, specifically for a bar, specifically for the spa, specifically for retail, you know, there's, so then we have, you know, specific SOPs, you know, that go into those areas as well. And then of course, you know, the other question, you know, for me is going to be then, you know, how does all this experience that we're gaining right now going to influence future designs? You know, I think we're learning a lot, you know, through this process, and yeah, maybe in the future we automatically, you know, design screens between booths, you know, and just, you know, just make it part of the standard design, and you know, from a standard design, really looking at you know, more closely at the air circulation processes, and you know, all these kind of things may even after COVID, you know, may really influence, you know, what we do in these designs.
Correct, I agree. I think it's, as you said, I think the whole process starts, of course, before the guests come on board. From the moment they fill in their health questionnaire, when they arrive to the vessel, that you use technology, you know, you answer those questionnaires in the technology that you have to make sure if there is any question that needs to halt the check-in process. You mentioned Abbott. We bought those tests as well. They start on sale on September 1st. When all this started, we are always learning, right? So when all this started, the only test it was available, rapid test, was the antibody test, which we used for a while, and now we are very much looking forward for the antigen quick test from Abbott. those we have them as well. We made the order. We need to see them and use them, but it seems very promising. I think it's the most right now for what I've seen, because getting the hold of equipment, it's very hard. So this rapid test already one step forward, that I think it's going to change few things here. So that's of course very good. And everything starts even before the guest steps on board, and then you need to customize to each area what you're doing as well, to make sure also find the right balance between what cruising is as well, because cruising is all about socializing and being with people and being in open spaces and talking and going to lectures. So it's all trying to find the right balance. And I think testing for sure it's going to be huge, no? Because now, for example, we have a vessel that is getting ready to move to Malta to pick up the first set of passengers. So we tested all crew with PCR testing. Everyone is negative. So now we are going through the process of them being in quarantine. So there is no one going in and out of the vessel. So when the vessel arrives to Malta, we can say, okay, this vessel is clean 100%. And then as the guests come on board, you need to test. And then I think this quick test, it's going to be very helpful. And that if everyone is negative, I think slowly you can customize also the experience to what the situation is on board with those passengers and those crew members as well, that they are at that time on board the ship, because every cruise can be somehow, I would say, different. Also, as we go through different regulations from different European countries, they all have a different take on COVID-19 too. So you also need to customize to the ports that you are going to. Greece doesn't want the same thing as Italy, for example, and Malta doesn't want the same thing as Spain. So it's also about your COVID procedures. They also need to be ad hoc documents that they customize to each port of call. But everything starts like at the very beginning, and I think this testing it's key for the restart of the industry as well.
I wasn't aware that you had a ship actually in operation. What market are you catering to?
We are on the German market. So we, unfortunately, last time we talked, we wanted to take the ship to Nice for the first cruise, Nice to Valletta, but we had to delay a little bit the trip, because some cases you have now peaks in Europe in different areas. So because we are, one of our vessels is with the German market, so we had the German government sent a travel warning to certain areas in the south of France. So now we are aiming to just basically streamline a little bit and do only the cruises in the Greek islands.
And do you have any agreements with the ports of call? If you have a case on board, will they allow them to be hospitalized ashore?
Yes. So usually what you do, you need to, before you go to the port, you need to share your COVID protocols with every port of call. So you need to before the guests come on board, you need to prove that the ship is clean in terms of COVID-19 among the crew. And then as you get in your first guest, different countries have different regulations. In this case, Greece wants travelers, not only cruise guests, travelers going to Greece, they need to take a PCR test in 72 hours before flying into the country. We, in addition to that, we plan to do also the quick testing before the guests then embark the vessel. And then, of course, we have partners with protocols that in case there was a suspected case or a positive case, then we have another set of protocols where we have other companies coming in and helping us with everything that must be done in the case a case is reported on board, because then you need to report the case to the authorities. Then you need to have a system in place to disembark, do the contact tracing. Most probably, if that happens, the ship will stop sailing too, so you will have to send everyone home. And then, of course, we have another company that we partner with to get into that. We hope it doesn't happen, but if it was to happen, there is a plan in place for that as well.
Yeah, I think the way we're looking at this is, testing is a process that helps to manage it, but it's not perfect. Okay,
no.
you will not be able, because the test is only valid for that slice in time. So I can get infected. I go and get tested tomorrow. I test negative, and then basically 3 or 4 days later, I'm going around and I'm spreading the virus. So
and you have false positives and false negatives.
Exactly.
So it's always going to be.
Exactly. So it's very difficult, and it's probably going to become less of an issue when the prevalence of the virus is going to go down. So obviously right now, for example, in the US, with a high level of prevalence, it would make it, and right now, obviously in the US, we cannot operate ships due to the no sail order, but it would make it very difficult, to manage it. With a low prevalence, you will the chance that you have a positive on board is very low. However, the way we think about this is that there is a likelihood that you will have somebody come on board with the COVID because of these things, and so and that's where the protocols are critically important on how do you manage that. That you have obviously with your different ports procedures set up, and also medical facilities or quarantine facilities set up where you can send these sailors off. I think one thing that we learned early in the year with some of the outbreaks on ships is you don't really want to keep anybody on board who has the virus, because it just continues to spread. What you need to do is bring this person off the ship, put them in quarantine, and manage it this way. And so again, we have learned a lot over time, and I think that in the future this just becomes a regular process. I don't believe that let's say half a year from now or next year or so, that we have to stop the entire cruise every time we have one case aboard. It's just going to be managed, and it's going to be managed properly, and it's controlled. It's the most controlled environment you can be in, and then you take you isolate this passenger, you take them off the ship, you quarantine the close contacts, you test everybody that had close contact, and you move on from there. And for us also, the contact tracing goes actually also beyond beyond being on a cruise, but we have a system in place where basically we track it for another 2 weeks, and keep those records. We track it for another 2 weeks when our sailors are already at home, and so that if something happened, if somebody tests positive and they're already home, and so we can let the other close contacts know while they're already at home. So I think these procedures will further evolve. Prevalence will go down over time, and it's going to be something where just because you have one positive test on board, not everything is going to shut down. So it's I don't think as we learn through this, I don't think that's going to happen.
I agree. Also, the vessel on the COVID protocols, there is the quarantine plans in case there is a positive case. You designate an area for isolation, and what are the protocols of that isolation. You designate a team of crew members and a leader to serve to those people as well. We also learned that through statistics, if you reinforce testing, if the guest test themselves before the travel, and you also do a very strict pre-boarding health questionnaire, plus the addition of further testing in a period of time. If you do all this, although you can never guarantee 100% anything, the likelihood of doing this and that there will be an outbreak on the ship, it reduces drastically. So if you are consistent on these protocols, there is a study, I don't know now in detail, but it comes from a German company, that if you do all these protocols in detail over a 24 period of, let's say over 24 months, the likelihood of have an outbreak on board the ship is very low. That if you don't do it, then your likelihood of an outbreak can be every month, right?
Yeah.
So just by implementing these protocols and being consistent about it, you already reduce a lot the likelihood of an outbreak on board.
Yeah, and when you look at the outbreaks, early in the year, obviously mistakes were made there, but also let's be clear, I don't think anybody really knew or understood what we're dealing with here. I don't think anybody in January or February thought that we are going to be now in August and we are in a world where pretty much we're still in quarantine, in a way. So I think obviously mistakes were made there. And I think one of the biggest mistakes obviously was to keep everybody on board and just let it continue to spread. But we learned from it. The health authorities learned from it, and I think I think the likelihood down the road to have a large outbreak on a ship, I think it's very, very low. I don't think that's really prevalent.
Yeah. And also I feel that the cruise lines have moved faster than the governments in creating plans, because you find a little bit in Europe, you find that when you share your COVID protocols with governments or ports of calls that you want to visit, there is, it's not the same to share your protocols with Germany than sharing your protocols with Greece, for example. You find that there is some governments that are catching up as well at how to deal with cruise ships, and it's not necessarily related to the COVID-19 itself. It's just them understanding the protocols and having also a good plan for cruise ships. So I feel in many ports that the cruise line is better ready than the public sector or the government in that area that we visit. So a lot of the restrictions also have to do with them not knowing yet how to deal with cruise ships, also because of the press out there and the whole initial of the Princess Cruises and the whole the ship in Japan. So all this press I can see affected a little bit, but they lost some objectivity, so to say. It's the ships, I think, with everything, even PCR equipment is available. You can have PCR equipment on board the ship, which is better than in some small cities. It's very hard to go for a PCR test. Sometimes you need to go. You cannot do it everywhere either. So I already see cruise lines that they have PCR equipment on board the vessels as well. So that's the cruise industry seems to be ready, and it's just a matter of fine-tuning some of the details.
Yeah.
Just to shift topic a little bit, the industry has been concerned and working toward higher levels of sustainability for some time, but with COVID now very much among us, sustainability has become even a higher level talking point these days. Anything that your companies are doing that will move the industry along toward higher levels of sustainability?
Well, I think from our side, as we designed the ship and developed the product, we always made this part of what we call our Epic Sea Change, and so protecting our oceans, protecting the environment is of course a massive driver of this. And so we have done, and I don't think that what we do in COVID and what we do from a sustainability perspective is in any way in conflict. So we of course if we say, well, you have to test everybody and you have to test cassettes and so on, and they have to be disposed of. That's probably the only area that I would say that creates waste in this point of view. But overall, operationally, we made a commitment for no single-use plastics, in our sailor areas. We made a commitment to technologies, maybe some LED technology, maybe our Clamion technology that reuses heat from the exhaust from the engine to generate energy on board. So it's basically a energy recovery system. And also, it goes all the way down to what kind of chemicals do we use on board. We want to make sure that we don't use stuff that's really harmful to the environment. With the other big areas for us was reduction of food waste, for example. So that was also another driver why we said we're not going to do a buffet because it just unfortunately does generate some food waste. And so if we cook things to order, if we cook things a la carte, we can reduce this food waste. So I think as an industry, we're doing a lot. The industry is really focused on making things greener, and this is not only this or that company, but I think in general there's a very, very good effort, a very high awareness of what it means to operate in a sustainable way, and also we learn from each other. We see things that maybe cruise line B does, and then cruise line C, it's like, oh yeah, this is a great idea. Maybe we should do something like this. It kind of started a little bit with the effort of no plastic straws, and then suddenly this you realize it's not only the straws, it's pretty much everything else that's around it, and so how can you do it? And for us, we also looked at okay, so we are in this kind of enclosed environment, and while you go, for example, to a Starbucks on land, and you get a paper cup and a plastic lid and a sleeve, and then you drive away and then you throw it away. We have an enclosed environment, and so from our perspective, we look at this enclosed environment and say, hey, how can we benefit from that? So in our coffee bars, you can have a throwaway walk away cup, but they're from recycled materials. But we typically serve our things in reusable containers. Our room service, the Ship Eats program that we developed, for example, doesn't use any plastic wrap. Everything has a lid that goes with, so we don't have to plastic wrap anything. We're doing things that are go away from these individually packaged ketchup and these kind of things. Rather go to bulk, and just put it in a ramekin or something. So there's a lot of little things that you can do that really help with this effort, and so we are of course fully committed to this. It goes back to where do you source your food from? Source from sustainable seafood. All these working with local farmers and bringing them aboard. So you cannot do everything, but you can start with it. We're working with a local brewery, to brew local beer. We are working with a local farm here, Hopke Farms here in South Florida, to actually grow produce specifically for us. We cannot replace the entire produce, but we can put a dent in it, and so that's really our focus in terms of sustainability, and it's really on the forefront of what we're doing.
David, from your side?
Yes, same here. For us, even now that we are building ships, we definitely, the company is committed to bring the most safest, ecological, sustainable ships that we can build already from the shipyard process. Then internally in the operation, no single-use plastics. We don't use paper straws or plastics of any kind. The amenities in the room, we don't have sample size bottles. We use recyclable bottles that can be refilled. The water on board as well, the water that we offer on board, we refill glass bottles. We have our own water system where we produce the still and the sparkling water, so we don't have to buy plastic bottles as well. The ship, the areas that we visit in the world is very important to us. We go to Antarctica, we go to the Arctic, the Amazon. So of course, the vessel, consumption of the vessel, the type of is a low emission. We don't use any heavy fuel. All this is definitely in the core values of the company. All the waste on board is either reuse, recycle, reclaim. Logistics is very important. It's very important for us to, even before the vessel arrives to the port, we try to source as much as local food as we can. Being a smaller vessel, we think it's possible to cut in our logistics, I will say, footprint, when you don't send containers all around the world. And we try to use, as Frank said, more local farmers or going to the local economy and make a difference there too. So if we have to buy meat, instead to put frozen meat in a container from somewhere in Europe down to Ushuaia, we do that locally. We make the contacts with the vendors and we do that locally. It's not a black and white type of situation, because you have to keep learning every year, and you have to grow those partnerships and have those vendors on your side too, to create a good pipeline of service. So, but we try every year. We do something every year where we make changes every year to be sure we are as sustainable as possible. And I think this was already, I think COVID-19 has taken a little bit the attention away from this, but before COVID-19, this was huge in the cruise industry to make changes in that regard. So yeah, from our side, we definitely go in that direction. Even now for the COVID, we try to, the water system that I explained to you, we do touchless, so it cannot be, so the bottles that refill by themselves, just like with a sensor. So we try to always stay on top of the game, so to say, and be one step ahead.
I think just one more point on the water part. So David, I think is also working with Natura, and so basically we have very high quality water on board. It goes to these systems. You can carbonize it. It's filtered. All those kind of things. And so there's multiple things. The way we look at it, and the way it has to be looked at is really the carbon footprint. So it's not only the plastic bottles or the glass bottles that we have to deal with on board, but it's also we're primarily operating out of Miami. Shipping fancy water from Europe to then packaged with a lot of plastic and packaging material and all that kind of stuff. You put it then on a truck. Truck goes onto a ship, goes with the ship, transferred to the United States, and then from there goes back into a truck, into a warehouse, and then it goes back on the truck again to bring to the ship. So there's a lot of touch points, that you use up a lot of energy, and so with these kind of decisions, we made a decision and said, okay, we're not going to serve these fancy waters on our ship, and we serve this kind of filtered water, which most of these waters are anyway. It is at the end of the day H2O, and so I think from that perspective, it's really taken a new look at this, where we can make an impact. Nothing against these fancy waters, I think sometimes we like those, but it has an impact, and if we can move more things also locally, as David said, that we don't have to ship everything all over the world, to make this work, and it requires some flexibility also in your program, in your menus, in your restaurants, where it cannot be always completely strict. This is what we're going to do, and we must have specifically this particular piece of beef on the menu, but it needs to, so you need to build in flexibility so that you can actually go and buy something locally and say, we can use this product, and maybe even a better product than we had before, and so we can change the menu easily and update it and just create a different dish. So it's all part of this. There's all these different actions that we can take to make this work.
Correct. I totally agree. It's very important. Supply chain and everything, it's very huge projects. It's very important, and you always have to be managing them and on top of them. They're very important.
Yeah, and it's complicated. So let's be very clear. It's very complicated. This is not easy. I mean, I think some of our people forget this. We're dealing with a moving target. Okay, so this is not where you are a hotel somewhere, let's say in Las Vegas, and you have all your suppliers set up and you can buy stuff locally. We're dealing with a moving target, with some companies with very large fleets with ships all over the world, and it becomes really a massive effort to go to this kind of sourcing. But I believe that most cruise lines, probably the majority of cruise lines, really looking at this effort and working in the local areas where the ships operate, to also from a cost perspective, reduce their cost, to rather than shipping everything all over the world, and so how can you do this?
Yeah, very important. This is, for me, it's one of it's huge for me. I always think about logistics and how we can do better on the places we visit. Particularly if like like Ushuaia, for example, in Argentina. When you're going back there a few times in 4-6 months, it's always it's better to try to get into the local economy, try to get the products that they are good over there, rather than trying to put them in a container, because it's the easy thing to do, right? To figure out your loading schedule in advance, and then to say, okay, this part of the business is already outsourced to this company. I know they have committed to deliver X amount of products on these dates, but I think more work in the industry needs to be done in that regard. Of course, for us being a smaller company, smaller vessels, priorities, we can shift priorities than the bigger lines. But I think if everyone does a little bit, as you said, I think it will make a huge impact.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, there's also many times there's a good business case to be made for this kind of thing. So there's sometimes people think, well, if we're using all this recycled material, the cost is going to go up. And I think there's a couple of things. One, with the actions that we have taken with our single-use plastics, it actually reduced our operational cost, and with those savings, we were able to then further expand the program, by more and more recycled items. So for example, sustainable toilet paper. It may sound funny, but that's obviously a high consumption item on a ship, and so you want to make sure you use the right product that works in your vacuum toilet systems and all these kind of things. But but these kind of things can actually make complete business sense, and it's the right thing to do. And the same with the sourcing. If you go and you are able to source locally, there's a good business case to be made, and so it's not always, oh, you have to do all these things and everything's going to be important. The other thing with this is also, as more and more volume is being produced, for these items. So talk about, go back to the plastic straws. Yeah, I mean, you can buy a plastic straw very, very cheap. Costs almost nothing. To put a plastic straw in a drink, and that's why we have been using it for so long. And then the replacement of this may be paper or some kind of other material, or I've seen avocado seed kind of straws. These things, of course, are in comparison very, very expensive. However, if that volume is going to go up, and more and more companies, and not only cruise industry but in general, the production goes up, the cost is going to go down. It becomes actually affordable, and then it's going to be widely used, and that then suddenly becomes the standard. And so but you have to start somewhere. Yeah, you have to start somewhere to do these kind of things, and really understand, one, do you really need a straw in the first place? Is it really necessary? Why do we put straws in everything? And then where you use it, this volume can actually help to reduce cost.
It's clear the industry has done a lot. It would be nice if the mainstream press would recognize some of that. But
yeah.
Well, okay, as our time is kind of running down here, let's think about longer term considerations. Frank was saying that as a vaccine is implemented, some of these precautions that you guys have put in place will probably loosen up a bit. Do you see the operations returning 100% to past practice, or do you see long-term implications from this COVID-19 incident?
I think some things will be here to stay. Some of the things that we are implementing today and that actually are not bad. It's like you always learn something during the process. I think there is nothing wrong with pre-health questionnaires that are a little bit more accurate and with like more the extra questions. There is nothing wrong with that, and I think things like that will be here to stay. As Frank mentioned before, maybe the restaurant design, maybe there is some people likes the new screens around the tables, or these things. I think some of these things they might be here to stay, particularly things related to technology. Now it's been it's been the perfect driver to go one step further with technology. What I was mentioning about the QR codes, I think this is very good. It's less paper usage on board, maximizing the apps. We have an app, Express Reader, which I think is very common in the industry for guests to read newspapers. So we have even reach out to them and develop between the app that we can also put internal communications from the company in that same app. So things that relate to these technology changes, I think they are good, and I think in the future they should stay if they are well received by the guests. I think some of these things will stay. I hope we don't have to wear masks when there is in the near future, that there is no need for face shields. I think will be good that the social distance, I think people will be more aware about social distance, but not necessarily there needs to be a social distance regulation. I think people automatically will always be more aware, and they will not forget what happened. But I think also we are particularly humans, we are sociable, right? So I think slowly this social distance thing will be less and less, and people will be going back to what we were, but without forgetting what happened. I think that that's also important not to forget.
Yeah.
So I think this some of these things will stay. Some things will stay. That's my take.
I agree with David. Some things will stay, and I think you just have to go back into the history. So when the cruise industry started, back in the late 60s, early 70s, operations and design and all these things were very, very different. And then during those times, because there were some issues with foodborne illness and that kind of stuff, the vessel sanitation program was put in place, and ever since the cruise industry and the CDC with the vessel sanitation program have been developing, all these rules and processes and procedures and also designs that are much much better than they were 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And as a matter of fact, as from a public health perspective, we do have a construction guideline from the vessel sanitation program that we need to follow, and all these things make sense. And all these things come from the experience that the industry has, the things that the industry has experienced over all these years. And if there was an issue, maybe with a foodborne illness or something else, or norovirus, the industry has worked together with the CDC to develop these processes, and also develop different designs. I mean, I remember when I started 30 years ago, we would just set up a face. There was no sneeze guards. It was just like, yeah, we just set it up. It looks nice. You do the whole thing, and there was not as much regulation. And sometimes, of course, as operators, we're sometimes also, oh my God, I cannot believe I have to do all this stuff. But at the end of the day, what it does is it obviously makes for a safer operation, but it also makes for higher quality operation. Okay, to really adhere to these things, and so out of this, in all these procedures, not everything will stick. I don't think once we're over the coronavirus altogether, probably I would estimate in about a couple of years maybe, things like testing and everything is going to go away. Mask wearing is going to go away. These kind of things, and we kind of go back to it. But there will be a lot of things that we will keep, in particular when it comes to technology, air management, how we design, our restaurants, as I mentioned earlier. So maybe we put some separation already in place from the beginning. The way we set our tables, some of these things, will simply stick. And we're probably going to make some of these even part of our vessel sanitation program in the future. So yeah, things are never the way they used to be in the good old days. Okay, so I mean that's in general, what we do. Things progress, things move forward, things will improve, and as we learn, we improve. We cannot stand still. That's that would be the worst thing. But I think everybody will look at these things very, very closely. Then as an industry, we will work together to make this to improve on these things. It makes sense. Again, it makes business sense for all of us, to really create the safest way to travel. As an industry, it makes business sense for all of us. Unfortunately, the cruise industry gets, I think, in my opinion, unfair press most of the time. If something happens, we're right there. It's an easy target. But when you think about it, we're the only industry that is actually regulated like this. We're the only industry that reports everything to the CDC. We're the only industry that really has, in the travel tourism industry, that has medical centers on board, where we know actually if people are sick or not. If you go on an airplane, there's very little, especially pre-COVID, that was done in terms of cleaning and sanitation and so on. And now, of course, it becomes to the forefront. But I think I think things will evolve in this environment, and we will do better and better and better. And like I said, also from a quality, it will always continue to improve.
And I also think we need to, the crew is a very important factor in the cruise industry. Of course, they're extremely important, and I think we have learned a lot about crew welfare over the last few months, and I think in the future we need to rethink and how we can do better for the crew as well. I think from designing spaces for the crew, maybe designing, going one step up from this, and to learn for better spaces for them, medical conditions, how to check on them, and bring the crew also into this. I think will be very important in the future, because the crew are very key to the cruise industry, and I think how we source crew members and what we do for them also will be very important in the future after this crisis, because a lot of them have stayed on board the vessels for many months, and there has been not a good response, I would say, and also their spaces on board, of course, are limited, because that's the crew members' life, right? The spaces are limited, the cabins are limited, so I think also as new ships are being built and all ships are being refurbished, we need to look into the crew as well, and into the crew welfare in general. So because in the future, when the industry restarts, we need to rethink about them a little bit and just bring it one step up in terms of.
Very good point, David. I think the clock is ticking on us here. So, gentlemen, we're looking forward to a day when we can roll back some of these procedures. But in the meantime, thank you for sharing what your companies are doing.
Thank you.
I hope the attendees have gotten the information they came for. And thank you to everyone for attending.
Great.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you for having us. Stay safe.